Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Audio Fanfics and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is What If Naruto Fell in Love with Sweet Azula, Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Azula watched as the bolt of lightning coursed through her arm and flew out of the tip of her fingers. It flew through the air with an audible buzz. If it hit, no, when that bolt of lightning hits its target it would mean the fall of Ba Sing Se. And that would mean one step closer to her goals. Poor Aang didn't even know what hit him as he fell back to the ground, unconscious. The bolt clearly tore through his shoulder, burning both his front and back. Aang, no! Screamed Katara as she raced to catch her friend's falling body. Good thing Sokka was right beneath Aang, lest he plummet to his death. As soon as Aang was safely in his arms he screamed to his sister. "We have to get out of here. Now." And with that they both ran, but not before Katara shot a death glare at Azula. "Should we go after them?" asked Ty Lee, arriving with Mai and a battalion of Fire Nation soldiers. Azula just smiled at where the trio disappeared to before saying, "Don't worry. They won't get far. Besides, with the Avatar wounded, they won't stand a chance against any of us now." Azula was feeling joyous at the moment. This was practically the best day of her life. Well, aside from seeing her brother burn at the hands of her father, but it was close enough. Azula was about to turn and leave when a soldier called everyone's attention. "Your Highness, I think I found something." "What is that?" thought the princess as she was currently staring at a metal door of some sort. Her last attack apparently went straight through the wall, causing a section of it to crumble, revealing the hidden door beneath it. The door was huge. Not even in the royal palace has she seen anything like it before. The metallic door was decorated with pictures of a battle long ago and descriptions to faded away to read. But a part of the description was still intact, and as Azula read through it, they sent chills down her spine. After the 12-year battle between Avatar Kiori, have no idea who the first one is, but roll with me on this one, the demon known as. At this point the words were too worn out to read until the last part. Beyond this door an ancient evil slumbers. May the spirits keep it here for all eternity. At that moment Azula was feeling conflicted. Her base instincts were telling her to just turn around and walk away. Or better yet, melt the door so nothing can ever open it, ever. But there was this voice inside her mind telling her that it was okay to take a peek inside. For all she knew, it might have been a trick that the earthbenders were using to hide a great treasure. One little peek wouldn't hurt anyone, right? Thought Azula, looking at the picture on the door again. The carving depicted the world being devoured by a darkness that possessed red eyes. At the bottom you could see people running away in fear. She gulped before pushing the gigantic door open. Surprisingly, it was near weightless and just a light push from Azula made it swing open fully. With a loud bang, the door hit the walls on the other side. As soon as the sound stopped, a gust of cold wind swept through the whole cave, blowing out a few torches. Zula, what did you do?" asked Ty Lee from across the large cave. Both she and Mai, along with the rest of the soldiers, approached the door warily, looking out for any traps that might activate. But Azula didn't pay any attention to anyone as she went into the darkened area fearlessly. The door actually opened up to a spiraling staircase going downwards and ended up in a large room with a dome for a ceiling. She noted that in the middle of the room was a large cube made out of rock, and it was covered, metal rods went through it. A waterfall from the ceiling drenched the cube, while a ring of fire surrounded it. Miraculously the fire and water didn't seem to extinguish one another. Azula also took note that a cold breeze filled the room and didn't seem to come from anywhere in particular. She approached the cube cautiously, the rest of the group behind her. Azula didn't know why, but she was drawn to this object. Her mind was telling her that she needed to touch it. As she got closer, the four elements that surrounded the cube seemed to move away from her, allowing her safe passage. "Your Highness, it is not safe for you to go near that thing," yelled out one of the soldiers. Sure, they were afraid of her, but if she got hurt or worse killed, they were more afraid of what would happen to them if the Fire Lord found out what happened to his favorite child. "When I want your opinion, I'll ask for it," snapped Azula as she turned to face the soldiers. They immediately fell silent after that. She turned around again and slowly placed a hand on the cube, and almost instantly, all the metal rods shot back inside. This of course startled Azula as she took a wary step back. Ever so slowly the cube began to crack. At first they appeared as thin as hair, but as seconds passed, they began to grow bigger and soon chunks of the cube started to fall off. But the whole cube did not crumble away, only the face that was in front of the princess crumbled. What was resting inside, however, surprised her. A boy, probably not older than 19, was chained up inside the cube. Dozens of paper slips were sticking to every part of his body. His hands were also wrapped up in chains, but small rods of metal and wood were painfully sticking out of them. His eyes were covered with a blindfold that had the same markings as the paper slips. His legs were treated the same way as his arms. In truth, the only thing you could see was his blonde hair. It was long and spiky, reaching the middle of his back. His skin was pale and nearly see-through. Aside from not rotting, you might believe that it was just another corpse. But the telltale sign of breathing meant that he was far from dead. Everyone gawked at the sight. Was this some kind of prison? The Earth-benders weren't known for this level of cruelty. Sure, they were fierce warriors on the battlefield, but they showed mercy nonetheless. Azula reached out and touched the chains, but as soon as she made skin contact, she fell down on her hands and knees. She gasped for air, feeling all her energy being drained from her. "Azula!" screamed Mai and Ty Lee as they rushed to help their fallen friend. What happened? As soon as I touched the chains, it felt like all of my energy was sucked out of me. Everyone held their breath as they heard the sounds of chains breaking apart and falling on the ground. They all watched as the body slowly got up from its kneeling position. The chains across its body and arms broke apart easily and carelessly fell to the ground. The blindfold seemed to burn off of his face and float away from him. Everyone was on bated breath as they watched the boy slowly open his eyes. It revealed blood-red irises and slits for pupils. He raised both hands and showed off his clawed hands. His nails might have even been sharper than Azula's. Then the boy unexpectedly smiled, revealing his longer than normal canines. "How long has it been?" he started, but his voice was raspy, not being able to use it for a long time. "A millennia, or was it longer than that?" He breathed in deep and surveyed the people around him. "Are you friends or enemies?" The room's temperature suddenly dropped significantly, enough for Azula to see her breath. "We mean you no harm," replied Ty Lee, raising both hands in a placating manner, and soon enough the temperature was back to normal. "In fact, Azula here was the one who broke that box of yours." Azula? At this point the strange boy knelt in front of Azula and lowered his head. "Thank you, I am now free. I am in your debt, until my death." Azula finally stood up to her full height and towered over him. This was the supposed demon that the first avatar locked away. He was a mere boy. Surely he isn't that strong, right? At that point Azula remembered the current avatar was also a boy. And if the markings held some truth in them, then this demon was so powerful that even an avatar was afraid of him. She couldn't help but smile inwardly. By sheer luck she had found a weapon that was possibly stronger than the avatar. Things just kept getting better and better for Azula. "What is your name?" she asked, head held high. Her hands were on her waist. "My name, I was once called Naruto." He could still remember that day. The day that Princess Azula had freed him from his supposed eternal prison. During his incarceration, Naruto was stuck in a meditative state. During the past millennia he was in the so-called spirit world and traveled the ever-changing lands. So Naruto knew about the events around him but not all of them. Naruto also knew that people did not use their inner energies or chakra anymore, instead using the natural energies around them. To Naruto it was a bit funny that people in this time could easily control elemental chakra but not the basics. In the first few days of being with Princess Azula and her group he had demonstrated numerous times the use of chakra and the use of elemental chakra. They were all amazed that another individual could have mastery on all four elements and even had more powers than the Avatar. Naruto also learned that people no longer used hand seals but instead molded their chakras through intricate moves. He compared them to dancing in a way. This gave him an advantage in fighting since the enemies would be confused on what he was doing, and before he was found out he would have killed the enemy already. What didn't make sense for Naruto, however, was that during his stay in the spirit world he never saw any avatars there. Not even once during his imprisonment. Azula also wanted to know if he was indeed an immortal and if he was really a demon. He laughed at that statement and even demonstrated that death could never reach him. How, you ask? He asked all the firebenders to burn him and not hold back, and after 5 intense minutes he casually walked out of the inferno, his charred skin already starting to heal. But this was not the only demonstration. He was also stabbed, clubbed, poisoned, impaled and even decapitated, but the end result would be the same. He would not even scream during this, which scared Azula's group more. But not Azula, no. If it was one thing she respected and admired was power, and Naruto had tons of it just rolling off of him. She could easily say that he could easily defeat the Avatar and still be able to fight her father without breaking a sweat. What Azula remembered the most during her time with Naruto was the use of something he called Kyuubi's chakra. Granted that the Kyuubi was no more, Naruto after a few hundred years finally absorbed it fully. Naruto could easily use all of the once tainted chakra. But the cloak would still appear nonetheless, without the uncontrollable bloodlust. Using this cloak enhanced all of Naruto's abilities, making him a force to be reckoned with. She still couldn't believe that by sheer accident that she found him. It was probably the best thing that ever happened to him. Present time. We find Naruto aboard Azula's ship, resting on the deck. He was on the ground looking up to the night sky. He was lost in his thoughts, contemplating about his current predicament. There was no hiding that the Fire Nation's intentions were evil. Hell, even their ships looked downright dastardly. But just because others think that the Fire Nation, which was ironically located where Hino Kuni was bad, does not mean that they really are. Naruto, during his time as a ninja, has accepted that not all things are considered black and white. He himself had to go on missions that weren't deemed nice. But in the 2 weeks since he has been allies with the Fire Nation he had garnered more respect than during his time as a shinobi of the Leaf. Another sad fact was, even though he had practically saved Konoha from pain and was able to bring back Uchiha Sasuke, only after those times has he been treated like a human being. And after so many years of trying to be acknowledged as a person again and again, and the end result would always be the same, the routine just got too troublesome to repeat. The bottom line was, as long as he was a Jinchuriki he would always, and I mean always, be seen as the Kyuubi, as a demon. So Naruto did what was logical, for him anyways. He accepted that he was in fact a demon. He showed everyone just how much of a demon he was during the war with Akatsuki. When he was in the front lines, facing off thousands of ninja under the control of Madara, Naruto let loose. The last shinobi war was also known as the shortest and the bloodiest of them all. And just like his father, his reputation got him the job of the Rokudaime Hokage. Naruto was snapped out of his trip down memory lane when he saw Azula standing over him. He slowly stood up and spoke. Well, good evening, Princess Azula. What brings you out here in the dead of night? As Naruto stood to his full height, he was at least a foot and a half taller than her. Come to keep me company? No, I wanted to tell you about where we will be headed right now. No use in keeping you in the dark. Naruto suddenly walked right up to Azula, putting his face mere inches away from hers. But it's so much fun not being able to know. I like being under pressure during combat and improvising on the spot. Naruto fell silent for a while before speaking. You should let your hair down, Azula, you look 10 times prettier. And just to prove his point, her hair suddenly fell out of its knot, her clip in Naruto's hand. See what I mean? With just your beauty you'd distract the enemies long enough to get them killed. Naruto started laughing as blue flames blasted him a good 10 feet back. Ha 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 ha. That's what I like about you, Azula. So strong and feisty. Shut up, screamed Azula as she shot another ball of fire at him. Naruto, to his credit, took the flame head on. You could hear his hysterical laughter through the roaring flames. But as the flames died down, he was gone, reappearing behind Azula. How? Her hands were held to her back with one hand while Naruto's right hand was placed on her belly. You should calm down, princess. Stress isn't good for you. With just a flick of his wrist, Azula's armor fell to the ground, baffling her to no end. Relax, he breathed into her ear, making her shiver. Grunting in protest, Azula was able to free her left arm and slash Naruto across the face, causing him to burst out laughing again. He staggered back, releasing Azula in the process. As soon as she was a few good feet away, Azula shot a bolt of lightning right to Naruto's face, burning it off completely. Even after this, he was still laughing like nothing had happened. That's it, princess. Use everything to try and kill me. Another bolt struck his chest. Unleash all your anger on me. Another hit him where his heart was. Come on, Azula. Strike me down. Kill this demon. One more blasted his arm off. After a few more shots, Azula fell to her knees, exhausting her completely. Naruto casually walked up to her, reattaching his arm in the process. He knelt down, now being in eye level with her. By the way, I know that we will be picking up Prince Zuko and General Iroh soon. Then we would go back to the capital of the Fire Nation and blah blah blah. You don't have to tell me anything, princess, I can hear and see everything. Naruto then noticed that her right forefinger and middle finger were still smoking. And you shouldn't overexert yourself. Lifting her arm carefully, he started to lick and suck her fingers. When he was done, Azula's fingers had no more smoke coming from them. Did you know you taste sweet? That earned Naruto a slap across the face. Owie! That hurt, princess. Come on, let me help you get to your room. A few days later, Zuko looked at the ship that was beside his own. His sister's ship easily dwarfed his. He clenched his fist in anticipation. It had been a week since the fall of Ba Sing Se and a week since the news that the Avatar was dead. Now, he was going to be riding with his sister back to the Fire Nation. And if his father allowed it, he would finally be able to go back home, permanently. Sure, this is what he strived for 3 years. He couldn't be happier. The only thing that unsettled him was the stranger standing beside her. One thing Zuko knows about his sister was, when she took an interest in you, you were either going to end up dead, or you were one powerful individual. And by the ever-present grin that was on the blonde boy's face, it was obvious. Hey Azula, look at that, half of his face is crispy. Whispered Naruto as he laughed to himself. They were soon in front of Zuko and Iroh, who was chained up behind him. Zuko took a step back as he saw Naruto's red eyes. People say it's rude to stare, boy. Naruto, Stop scaring Zuko. Chided Ty Lee, who was walking beside Naruto, on her left side. Zuko, it's so nice to see you again. Are you happy that you can finally go back home? Let's just get it over with it, Azula. No need to drag this out longer than it has to. Spat out Zuko, walking up to her ship. Your words wound me, brother. Azula acted like she was in pain before looking down on the broken image of her uncle. She scoffed before letting the soldiers drag him to her ship. Who's going to attach my ship to yours? Asked Zuko as he leaned on the railings. He flinched when he saw Azula smiling at him sweetly. She never smiled like that. You mean that disgusting thing? Azula pointed at Zuko's ship, a look of annoyance on her face. She looked at Naruto before saying, destroy it. What? No. Zuko yelled out in vain as Naruto hopped on the railings before stretching out his hands into the air. At first, nothing happened. But then the waters started to ripple as Zuko's ship slowly floated to the air. As soon as it was leveled with Naruto, he reeled back his right arm before creating an invisible blade of wind. Don't do it! Don't do it! Yelled Zuko before his ship was sliced in two before it was crushed into a compact metal ball. It then dropped back into the ocean carelessly. Did you say something, Prince? Naruto replied, a grin creeping back up to his face. Oh, was that your ship? Zuko in response just screamed to the heavens, a stream of fire going out of his mouth. Question mark. Where am I? Asked Aang as he sat up on the bed. He notices that he wasn't in the Earth Kingdom anymore, and by the sounds he could hear outside, he was on a ship. A Fire Nation ship. 2 days to the Fire Nation. Zuko, after a few days on Azula's ship, now knew 2 things. 1. He had learned that Naruto was a very powerful individual that could rival the Avatar himself, and 2. He was the supposed new pet of Azula, who was in fact on a very, very long leash. As far as he knew, he could do anything and everything he wanted. He was even able to fool around with Azula. Something that no one did. He didn't know if either he was flirting with her or just plain pissing her off. Either way, he knew that it was best to steer clear of him unless you wanted to get pissed off yourself. Naruto somehow knew just the right thing to say to get under your skin. He could even get the ever-stoic Mai to flare up. Are you cold? Zuko turned to see who it was and speak of the devil, it was Mai. I've been away from home for 3 years, started Zuko looking back out into the sea. A lot has probably changed since then, huh? I asked if you were cold, not your life story, Zuko. Interrupted Mai. She was moodier than usual. Probably Naruto was pissing her off before she went here. Thought Zuko before Mai took a step closer and suddenly kissed him. You should stop worrying. With that, she walked back into the ship. Zuko at first was stunned at her actions but then smiled. She's probably right, I should stop worrying. Everything will be fine. Zuko was suddenly in a brighter mood thanks to that. Wow, I bet even the spirits didn't see that one happening. And suddenly his mood dropped back down. He turned around to see Naruto sitting on the railings, looking out to the open seas. But Mai has a point, Zuko. You should stop with the stressing out. It's not good for your health. For some strange reason, Naruto was not his usual self. Zuko noted that he was way calmer than before. Tell me, Prince, is it worth it? He asked suddenly, turning to face the scarred prince. What's worth it? Zuko replies. Your honor, is it worth betraying your friends over for? What are you talking about? Replied Zuko, anger evident in his voice. Me. I'm not talking about anything. Good night, Zuko, pleasant dreams. Naruto soon left the deck, heading towards his room. Question mark. What is the meaning of this? Exclaimed the Hokage as he was surrounded by a group mixed of Anbu, Junin and Chunin ranked shinobi. It was a mistake choosing you to become the Hokage, Naruto. From behind the crowd, Uchiha Sasuke, now blind in his right eye, spoke. I mean, what were we thinking picking a demon to lead us? What is this? Am I dreaming? So, you're the demon everyone is talking about. A man who was probably in his late 30s stood in front of a paralyzed Naruto. He was bald but with a red goatee long enough to reach his chest. He was well built and wore green-colored clothing. It had been 500 years since the elemental nations were no more, mostly because of him and a certain Biju. And up until now, he was in isolation from everyone and everything. He settled into what was once Iwagakure no Sato. But no one lived here anymore since they were all dead. Who are you? What are you doing here in my cave? I am Avatar Kyori. And this cave will be your prison, demon. I remember that day. Hey, he kept coming back even after I beat him half to death. It is over, demon, you're finished. Kyori's eyes started to glow as he used all of his powers to lift up a 3-story cube around the chained-up Naruto. Everyone present at the time, earth, fire, wind and water benders watched as the Avatar finally won against Naruto. Even if you strike me down 1,000 times, Avatar, I'll always stand right back up. I can never be killed, I am immortal, and I am the Kyuubi. Naruto's chakra cloak flared up into life, 3 taels worth of power sprang to life. As soon as the slab of stone covered the roof, part of the cube, a ring of fire suddenly sprang to life as well as a strong breeze coming from nowhere. I'll be back, Avatar, and when I'm out, you better watch out. One day, Naruto slowly opened his eyes as the early morning sun filtered through his room's windows. He slowly sat up from his bed and only noticed now that he was sweating. He stood up and went to the window. Land was visible over the horizon, they would probably reach it in a few hours' time. He let out a sigh as he got ready for the day. Down in the ship's mess hall, everything was quiet as brother and sister ate their breakfast. Zuko, wearing his usual attire, was just staring at his bowl of something while Azula was reading a scroll that arrived via messenger pigeon the same morning. It was from the Imperial Palace and contained instructions on what to do when they arrived. Apparently they were to go straight to the palace so that Fire Lord Ozai could talk to his Zuko. Azula looked up from the scroll and observed her brother. He was staring intently at his bowl that it seemed like he was in a trance. His right arm was propped up on the table supporting his head while his left hand drew patterns his food with a spoon. But then Zuko stopped what he was doing as his soup started to bubble up. Azula blinked at that. They were eating oatmeal. They weren't supposed to bubble like that, right? She stared at him intently as his face was mere inches from the bowl before it exploded all over his face. Good one, Ruto, Ty Lee said in between bursts of laughter. Azula turned to where the voice was and saw that Ty Lee and Naruto were behind the doorframe, poking out their heads from the outside. Even though Mai was trying to hide it from behind her long sleeves, she was also giggling. If only slightly. You need to lighten up, Zuko. Moping around day and night makes you look more like an idiot than you already are. Screamed Naruto before all 3 of them were chased out of the mess hall by an enraged prince. Idiots, mumbled Azula going back to reading the scroll. We're going to sneak into the Fire Nation. Aang screamed before clutching his wounded ribs. Afternoon. Azula was currently practicing her fire bending. Naruto was there watching her while the others were somewhere on the ship. She glanced at Naruto and saw that he was also practicing, going through multiple hand seals, as he calls it, before calling out the name of the technique. Kaden. Ruka no Jutsu. Fire Release. Dragon Fire Technique. A torrent of flame quickly escaped Naruto's mouth before reforming just a few feet above him. At first it looked like your average stream of fire, until it took the shape of a roaring dragon. It flew up in the air before rushing down into the sea, creating hot steam in the process. What was that? Thought Azula as she approached Naruto through the steam. As the steam slowly cleared out, she saw Naruto slowly wiping off the dew that collected on his all-black uniform, think standard Fire Nation uniform except all black and the trimmings are red. If Azula wasn't so stubborn, she would admit that right now he looked very attractive. Naruto, she started getting his attention, he smiled at her before letting her continue. I want you to teach me how you could bend so easily. Bend? I'm not actually bending, more like chakra manipulation. Naruto walked towards her after seeing her confused look. Let me explain then in the easiest way to understand it. Are you insinuating that I'm stupid? Shot back Azula immediately. What? No. Of course not. I just want to make it sound easier so I don't have to repeat myself over and over and over and over and over, you get my point. Just get on with it. Can you at least say please? A lightning bolt barely missed his head. Ha ha ha. That's why I like you Azula. Always so full of energy and never afraid to fight. Naruto walked behind her before speaking again, gaining a sort of old wisdom tone in his voice. Chakra is essential to even the most basic jutsu. It is a mixture of the physical energy present in every cell of the body and the spiritual energy gained from exercise and experience. Once mixed, it can be channeled through the chakra circulatory system, which is to chakra as the regular circulatory system is to blood, to any of the 361 chakra points called tenketsu in the body. Through various methods, the most common of which is hand seals, the chakra can then be manipulated to create an effect that would not be possible otherwise, such as walking on water. Naruto demonstrated by jumping over the railings and landing softly above the water. There are two different types of chakra. Normal chakra is a form of energy all living individuals naturally produce to some degree, and elemental chakra. The people in this era strangely have really strong control over their elemental chakra, and instead of hand seals you guys learn to manipulate them through, bending. He demonstrated further by fire bending and launching another fire dragon. When it comes down to it, all you need is concentration. Both of them practiced until midnight. Although Azula had potential for being a great shinobi, there was only one problem. The reason for bending, instead of hand seals, was that people these days have, instead of having 361 chakra points, they now only had a mere 100. Mostly centralized in their arms, feet, legs, hands and head. Without the other 261 she couldn't possibly use any non-elemental jutsu. The bending moves also replace hand seals, and since they are more grand, in a sense they can harness enough chakra through the few chakra points they have left in their body. One thing that Naruto had thought about is that the avatars are the only ones who have enough chakra points to use elemental chakra to the fullest. Soon enough Azula was on the ground, clearly exhausted, while Naruto barely broke a sweat. He calmly walked towards Azula and sat beside her. I guess it's useless to try and train you. A shame, it would have been fun teaching you on how to use Sage Mode. He leaned down and got really close to Azula, smiling through it all. Not to mention you being my apprentice. Doesn't that just roll of the tip of your tongue? Apprentice Azula, now that's a title. He looked down at Azula and found her already sleeping. He let out a soft chuckle before picking her up. I wonder if dear old Dad would approve of a 1,000-year-old dating his 14-year-old daughter. Am I considered a pedophile? A palanquin, really? After 1,000 years they still use these? The palanquin is a form of litter transport used by the members of the nobility in various cultures in the world. Usually 4 to 6 servants are required to carry one. The Fire Nation considers it a member of the royal family's place to always ride in one when traveling outside the palace. Right now, Princess Azula was riding one and was headed to the royal palace. Prince Zuko was a few feet ahead of her since he was the older brother. Mai and Ty Lee were located on Azula's left side while Naruto insisted on being in the front. Not only is it slow, but it makes you a target right in the open. At least add some armor plating or use a body double. You'd think you guys would be more careful since you were in a war. Ranted Naruto as he looked at the carriers who were all thin and frail looking. No one in their right minds would dare attack the Fire Nation's royal family. In fact, no one is stupid enough to actually try and sneak into the Fire Nation. Replied Azula, who was currently trying her best to look regal, while fighting the urge to jump off the damn thing and attack Naruto. You guys don't have any form of assassins anymore. I guess you guys are a bit more civilized to not use such an underhanded technique as assassinations. Naruto then proceeded to walk besides the other two girls. Hey guys, what's up? Aside from being bored walking to the palace. Nothing much really, replied Mai as she crossed her arms in frustration. Well, what's up with you, Tai? Asked Naruto as he observed Mai spinning one of her throwing knives, strangely reminding him of someone. I can't wait to get to the palace. You'll like it there, Naruto, the food is fantastic. Tai Lee had a happier atmosphere around her, having a special skip in her step for some reason. Did they have ramen? Asked Naruto, who sorely needed his fix. It had been a very long time since he had any of the heavenly substance. Ramen. What's a ramen? Asked Mai, who actually didn't care about the question and was only trying to preoccupy herself. Are you serious? All of you don't know about ramen. Spirits, what has this world turned into? Zuko, tell me you know about ramen. Naruto had his hands together in a pleading manner, hoping that they weren't serious. Never heard of it, was Zuko's almost instant reply. He too was bored out of his mind and wanted to get to the palace sooner than later. That's just great. Well, it's settled then. I have to cook ramen for you guys to show you what all of you were missing. Naruto was already thinking on what to cook for his friends. Should he cook his favorite miso ramen or? As they approached the palace, they were greeted by a parade of people. Some were throwing flowers at the group while the rest cheered for them. Even little children approached them to give them the rare and expensive fire lilies. But a child who looked at Naruto's eyes ran away crying. How sweet, he scowled while picking up the flower that the child dropped before pocketing it. And they said I wasn't good with kids. Ty Lee couldn't help but laugh at Naruto's sarcasm. A red carpet was rolled out that connected the main gates to the palace's front doors. They were also littered with fresh rose petals. Zuko was first to go off his transport, followed by Azula. Everyone that lined the way knelt down before bowing to them, their heads almost touching the ground. Welcome to the Fire Nation, Naruto, the strongest in the entire world. With her left hand on the small of her back, she made a sweeping motion that gestured to the people, then to the massive palace in front of them. Welcome to your new home. Above the Fire Nation, do you see anywhere we can land? Asked Aang, who was using a combination of water and air bending to hide Appa in a cloud. Katara and Sokka were looking over the vast plains and valleys of the Fire Nation. Over there, screamed Sokka, who almost fell off of Appa. Luckily Katara got a hold of him before he plummeted to his death. I saw a cave a ways back. I think it's even big enough to hide Appa. Well, what are we waiting for? Let's land already. As soon as they were properly settled into the cave, Sokka told them about his plan. Alright guys, first thing we're gonna need are new clothes. We'll head into town and find what we can. Let's try to be subtle about these guys, we don't wanna get captures now, do we? All three nodded before heading towards the town. It wasn't really that hard to find clothes for the whole group. As soon as they entered the gateway, Aang had found an unattended clothesline that had clothes that perfectly fit them. It looked like the spirits were finally giving them a break. The plan was going smoothly until they entered the main plaza, and as soon as Sokka said, "Blend," with the crowd, well, let's just say it wasn't so low-key. Since Aang had traveled to the Fire Nation before, he told his friends that he was the expert in their customs. The problem was, that was 100 years ago. Well, your only good plan just went down the toilet, Sokka. What now? Toph, who was keeping an eye out, so to speak, listened to Aang's out-of-date phrases and words. If they weren't supposed to keep a low profile, she would probably be rolling on the ground, laughing. Why don't we just get something to eat and let Aang sort this one out? I'm so depressed I don't even have the willpower to shout at him anymore. Sokka left with the two girls, not seeing Aang getting dragged off a group of men. If they stayed, then they would have probably heard one of the men say, "You're in big trouble, kid. Ditching classes is a major offense." Palace. Naruto listened to the speech that Lo and Lee, Azula's ancient advisors, about the victory over the great city of Ba Sing Se. The return of Prince Zuko and, of course, the death of the Avatar. The people cheered loudly and confetti and flowers were thrown in the air in celebration. He couldn't help but remember his coronation as the Rokudaime Hokage. That had been the best day of his immortal life. His features turned into a scowl as he remembered the betrayal that sent him into an uncontrollable rampage. The railings that he was holding suddenly creaked in protest as it was crushed. In the end, I was proven wrong. Always telling them I wasn't a monster, but in the end, he trembled before his wide grin appeared again. A chuckle, that could make Orochimaru cower in fear, escaping from between his teeth. They were right. I am a monster. Although Naruto's chuckle wasn't that loud, Zuko, Azula, my entirely heard it. It was absolutely dripping with evil and madness. Different thoughts ran through their minds, but Azula saw something familiar in his eyes. Loneliness, a feeling she was quite familiar with. She felt something tighten in her chest before dismissing it, looking back at the crowd of loyal subjects. Soon all of this would be hers, and she meant everything. She looked at her brother, Zuko, and raised her voice loud enough so that she could be heard. I almost forgot to tell you that our father wants to speak with you. He's probably going to congratulate you for killing the Avatar. Zuko's head turned so fast that Azula thought it was going to snap off. What? But you were the one who killed him. Oh please, brother, the spirits know you need the reputation to get into father's good graces again. Besides, there's nothing to worry about, right? The Avatar is dead. She gave her brother a look that said, "We're both dead if he's still alive." Yes, of course he's dead. Your lightning went right through him. Good, Azula replied as she left the balcony, Naruto right behind her. Princess? Naruto asked before Azula turned mid-step facing him fully. I am well aware that the Avatar is still alive. But do you know what that means? Your will be done, Azula. With a gust of violent wind, Naruto was gone. Azula looked at the spot where Naruto stood before resuming her pace. She needed to report to her father what she found under Ba Sing Se. He would be pleased that the Fire Nation had gained another trick up its sleeves. She would leave out the fact that the Avatar was alive. She didn't want her father thinking her a disgrace. One day later with Aang. He messed with the headband that covered his air-bending arrow. He didn't want to hide it, but it was necessary to blend into the school he was accidentally attending. This was actually a stroke of luck for him, since he would be able to learn fire-bending straight from an instructor and not from the scrolls they have gathered throughout their travels. Aang looked at the music instrument he held with both hands. It was called a sungi horn and it looked downright goofy. But he didn't care. He had a fun time playing it and was happy to try and play new things. As the music instructor berated Aang for dancing, Naruto watched from the shadows. It was easy to acquire access and get a spare teacher's uniform when you tell them he was under orders from the meanest 14-year-old. With the inside joke alone, the whole staff let him do as he pleased and was not disturbed any longer. This new avatar puzzled him though. He didn't exude the kind of aura that Kiori did. In fact, he was just a mere child. From his spot he could easily kill him. But he wasn't going to. Aang had piqued his interest and he wanted to observe more before he killed him. I could teach you how, proclaimed Aang, who was talking to his friend, Anji. She was amused by Aang's dance moves, and was happy to learn from him. Until her boyfriend, Hyde, pulled her away from Aang angrily. Alright, that's it. I warned you yesterday, didn't I? Talk to my girlfriend and you're dead meat. He swung his right fist at Aang, who expertly dodged it. Hyde swung again, but it was still too slow to hit the airbender. Wow, you're really slow, aren't you? Aang sidestepped another punch before Hyde's overextended punch throws him off balance. He falls face first on the hard ground. Young man. Aang turns around to see the headmaster of the academy walking towards him, and he didn't look happy. The headmaster looks at Hyde's prone form and starts snapping at Aang. I want your parent to come here tomorrow for a parent-teacher conference, do you understand? His tone was angry and belittling, something that made Naruto act. Headmaster, please don't be too quick to judge. I saw what happened here and I can assure you that Kuzan did nothing wrong. He led the headmaster a few feet away from the group of children before whispering. Besides headmaster, this boy was transferred from the Earth Kingdom. Naruto let the sentence hang before realization hit the headmaster. I see, well then that explains it. But he will still be punished for his actions. Naruto just shrugged at the reply as he watched the headmaster walk back to Aang and scold him again. Naruto, who was satisfied with what he learned about the Avatar, decided to leave the academy. Palace. Fire Lord Ozai was in a brighter mood than usual. The news of the fall of Ba Sing Se was one thing, but hearing his son, who was the one to actually strike down the Avatar, it made him forget how much of a disappointment he was. Now he was waiting in his throne room for this Naruto character. Azula was strangely vague about who he was, but she did say that he was a very skilled bender. He could always use another soldier, and the way Azula spoke about him made him think she was actually fancying this boy. He laughed at the idea. Azula actually liking someone. She was so driven with her goals that he thought that she was incapable of that feeling. The door slowly swung open, revealing a blonde-haired boy. On his cheeks were the most peculiar set of scars he had ever seen. His eyes were also strange, blood red and black slits for pupils. He wore the standard uniform for the soldiers, but the only difference was that it was all black and the collar was slightly higher. He approached the Fire Lord slowly. Every step he took held purpose. Naruto walked like he was born into royalty of some kind. As soon as he was in front of Ozai, he was already on his knees, head bowed down. He didn't speak, knowing it was proper to speak only when spoken to. Well, you know how to act in the presence of your superiors. But tell me, Naruto, where do you come from? The Fire Lord stroked his long goatee while saying this. Before my absence, I lived on this land. Oh, so you're a citizen of the Fire Nation? You could say that, but before I was captured, this land was once known as Hai no Kuni. But it hasn't been called that for nearly 1,000 years. Ozai leaned back on his throne because of that. 1,000 years? Who is this kid? He cleared his throat before speaking again. So you were a soldier when you were still active? Yes, I was known as the strongest in my village. I see. Ozai was in deep thought. He had heard of that name before. It was in one of the history books that told what was, before the creation of the four nations. He was especially interested in the tailed demons that once inhabited selected individuals to wield unspeakable power. He even did some research on what had happened to them, but all the beasts died except for one, which was the strongest. If what you're saying is true, then surely you know about the demons. When Naruto smiled, the Fire Lord was put on the edge of his throne. Maybe he knew something about the last one. The tailed demons. Yes, I know of them, they were 9 in total. But there is only one left living in the physical world. Do you know what happened to them? Well, I had friends who were the containers of these demons. All of them were killed because the beasts were forcefully taken out of their bodies. A terrorist group, that is now long gone, were the ones doing these acts. I, along with my comrades, was able to kill them and set free the beasts. After they were released, the beasts decided to go back to their plane of existence. Only one remained though, the strongest of them all. The 9-tailed demon was never extracted from its host and therefore remained in the physical world. I am the 9 tails host. Yes, I thought as much, replied the Fire Lord before leaning back on his throne. It was really obvious once he placed 2 and 2 together. The missing demon and the 1,000-year-old boy, not really hard to guess. So why have you aligned yourself with the Fire Nation? Surely you have your own agenda. After 500 years of living and another 500 imprisoned, I ran out of agendas of my own. But now I share the goals of Azula. She saved me from my eternal prison and I owe her my life for her kindness. You may go now, Naruto. I look forward in seeing your skills on the battlefield. The Fire Lord was in deep thought at the moment. Will his presence make his plans easier, or will it make it harder? A few floors up. Enter. He casually walked into Azula's room and was about to comment on her bathrobe when he noticed the scowl on her face. Are you all right, Princess Azula? He asked as he got behind her. Azula was looking out of her room window. Her face was in an angry scowl. The reason? Zuko was caught by her visiting Iroh. If anyone found out about this, then his reputation would go down considerably, resulting in her reputation going down because she was related to Zuko. Maybe she should let Naruto kill both Zuko and Iroh. No, that would be a bad idea. Azula needed Zuko because he was the scapegoat. If the Avatar showed up again, then he would be the one to blame. She looked at Naruto for a few seconds before looking out the window. Her father was also a problem. By now he would have figured out what Naruto was and he was probably scheming on how to use him through her. This was supposed to be a happy moment for her. Now it was ruined by these nuisances. Soft hands were placed on top of her shoulders, snapping her out of her thoughts. Princess, you look troubled. You know that you could approach me for anything, correct? I offer everything to you. My life or otherwise. A low charge of electricity traveled through her body, tickling and relaxing her muscles in the process. You can share your burdens with me, I won't mind. Naruto was close to her ear, like he was whispering a secret that only she should hear. Trust in me, Azula, I am also your friend. I will always be there when you need me. Azula was starting to feel cold as soon as his hands left her. She turned around to see Naruto smiling back at her. But this was not his usual, evil and sadistic smile. His smile, for Azula, showed warmth that filled her whole being. She didn't know why she felt this way, but being the stubborn girl that she was, she quickly dismissed the feeling and spoke. Very well then, I have received orders from the Fire Lord that we are to crush any remaining Earth Kingdom threats. We leave in 2 weeks. What of the Avatar? She asked, already planning on what they would have to do. Oh, the boy, he won't be a problem to you, Princess Azula. Meanwhile, Aang and his friends escape from the Academy's teachers and headmasters. They would have to find another place to hide and lay low for a while. That night Aang received a warning from Avatar Roku. Aang, I'm sorry I was not able to contact you sooner, but you must listen carefully. An ancient evil has been awakened. It has sided with the Fire Nation and you must stop it at all costs. If that demon is truly helping the Fire Nation, then I am afraid that this will be the end of peace and the balance of the whole world will be destroyed. I know you of all people will be the only one to stop him, but be careful. The demon holds control over all the elements, so you must master them too. Please Aang, the fate of the whole world is in greater danger now more than ever. Remember Aang, your destiny is to save this world and bring balance to this world. That creature will be the biggest obstacle you will face. I can only give you one final warning, I'm sorry. Watch out for the man with the crimson eyes. Aang woke up in a cold sweat. Azula could do a lot of things, but facing off at least a few hundred earthbenders was a little bit out of our reach. Sure, she brought a good number of soldiers with her, but they weren't expecting to be separated from the get-go. She was with Ty Lee and Mai, and they were currently taking cover on a beached Fire Nation ship. It was a good thing Toph wasn't fighting with the other earthbenders. Where the hell did Naruto go? Mai ducked from a piece of rock that shattered on the ship's hull. Don't worry guys, I bet that Naruto has a plan to save us. Ty Lee, even in their current situation, was still in a chipper mood than the other two. Azula, however, was silent, thinking of a way to get them out of this situation. Futon. Rasenshuriken. A shadow cast over all the earthbenders as Naruto held his most powerful wind-based attack. As he let the deadly swirling ball of wind and chakra go, he proceeded to make hand seals in such a quick pace that his hands blurred from existence. Kaden. Ruka no Jutsu. The fire-shaped dragon roared into life and slammed into the expanding form of the Rasenshuriken. The ball of wind quickly magnified and fanned out the flames in every direction. Only a lucky few were able to escape the devastating attack, but don't think I'm finished with you, you filthy earthbenders. Tajushinju Zanshu no Jutsu. Multiple headhunting technique. Poor earthbenders weren't expecting a few hundred cage buncheons dragged every last one of them into the ground before Naruto finished it with Kaden. Hosenka no Jutsu. He shot out multiple balls of fire to the heads of each enemy, and soon enough the only thing you could hear in the battlefield was their screams. I hate earthbenders. Naruto screamed as he kicked a charred black head into ashes. They all deserve to die. Such anger could be contributed to the fact that Avatar Kyori was in fact an earthbender as well. Anger now fueled Naruto as he saw more of them coming towards him. They were also accompanied by a few Earth Kingdom tanks. So you guys wanna play? Fine with me. His four-tailed state suddenly burst into life. 4 red chakra tails moved angrily behind him. But this was a controlled transformation, as only Naruto's hands and feet were covered in the black substance. Additionally, the black substance formed 2 fox ears above his head. Naruto got down on all fours and concentrated. A ball of dark chakra started to form right in front of Naruto's face, growing bigger as the seconds ticked by. Unexpectedly, as the ball of energy was the size of a fist, Naruto ate it, smoke coming out of his mouth. The ground around Naruto suddenly pressurized and formed a 10-foot wide crater around him. And with a deafening roar, he fired a destructive beam of energy towards the small army. The energy beam didn't even push back the tanks. It just cut a path right through them and towards the small fortress that housed a good few hundred more earthbenders, both soldiers and civilian alike. The whole world was bathed in white light as the beam exploded into a pure white dome of death. Naruto looked at his handiwork, a scowl on his face. He wasn't satisfied with this. Old feelings from the past resurfaced, and all he wanted to do was make every descendant of Kyori die by his hands. But with a calm that could only be achieved by hundreds of years of meditation, he controlled his feelings and schooled his features. He turned back to Azula, who was now standing with the other Fire Nation soldiers. They all stared at him with shocked expressions as his cloak slowly vanished. Well, that takes care of the last pocket of Earth Kingdom threats. He dusted himself off and walked towards the stunned group. What do you wanna do now, princess? Go back home or what? I for one think we need a vacation, well at least I do. I wanna go to Ember Island. Ty Lee was practically jumping up and down with anticipation. Ember Island is a small resort located in the outer islands of the Fire Nation. It is home to many luxurious resorts and vacation homes for the wealthy and powerful. The beaches are among the most popular in the country, and host many popular Kuei ball games. It was the top vacation destination in the Fire Nation. Actually, that sounds like a great idea. Besides, Lo and Lee invited us to their beach house once we were done. That was what happened before they went back to the Fire Nation to get some more casual clothing. They didn't stay long and was soon on their way to Ember Island. Right now they were on a private barge, about halfway to the island. Each person was doing their own thing. Zuko, who was also invited, was talking to Mai while Ty Lee was looking up at the clouds. I'm so excited to spend the weekend on Ember Island. It's gonna be great to hang out on the beach and do nothing, she said, putting her hands behind her back. Doing nothing is a waste of time, Zuko said as he stood up, his robes fluttering in the breeze. We're being sent on a forced vacation. I feel like a child. He leaned down on railings and looked out into the sea. Lighten up, started Azula, who was leaning down on the railings, her back facing Ember Island. So Dad wants to meet with his advisors alone, don't take it personally. Doesn't your family have a house on Ember Island? Asked Ty Lee. We used to go here every summer when we were kids. Azula replied as she looked at her friend. That must have been fun. That was a long time ago, interjected Zuko, who was still looking out into the sea. Mai looked at her boyfriend briefly before her attention was drawn to Naruto. Azula, what's Naruto doing? All four of them looked at Naruto, who was riding the hippo-like creature that was attached to the front of the ship. Naruto was laughing happily as the hippo kept dipping its head in the water, splashing him along. Not surprisingly, he was already in his swimming trunks, orange of course. It looks fun. Ty Lee ended up riding on the creature as well, who was making sounds of joy. The group soon arrived at the docks, Lo and Lee already there to greet them. Welcome to Ember Island, kids, they both said at the same time. Behind them was a house that was nestled on top of the cliff face. All of them weren't expecting it to look so small, except for Naruto anyway, as he ran towards it, carrying their entire luggage. It smells like old lady in here, whispered Zuko to his girlfriend, who promptly replied. Gee, I wonder why, Mai said stoically. Ty Lee was looking at a picture posted on the wall. It was a picture of two ladies in golden two pieces. They were bent down with their bottoms sticking to each other. Who are these two beautiful women? She asked, pointing at the large picture. Can't you tell? Asked the twins at the same time. It's Lo and Lee. They both said, following the same pose as the picture. Both Naruto and Zuko gagged at their actions. We know you're all upset in being forced into going here this weekend, but give it a chance, Lo said as her sister, Lee continued. Ember Island is a magical place. Keep an open mind. At this point both spoke, and it will help you understand yourselves and each other. Time to hit the beach, both ladies said as they revealed that they were wearing swimsuits underneath their clothes. Mai covered Zuko's eyes while the rest stared on in a mix of shock, horror and disgust in Naruto's case, as this time he really did throw up. Mother of pearl. There are times when I wished my eyes were so high def. Meanwhile, Aang and his friends were in another part of the island. They were currently swimming in a large crater filled with water. Aang was floating around with Momo as Katara wringed out water from her hair. Toph was on a rock while Sokka was with Appa. Aang, are you sure you're supposed to be exposed like that? She asked, dipping her feet into the cold water. What? I'm wearing trunks, Aang said as he found a cave that created a natural water slide down to who knows where. Besides, there are walls all around us, no one's going to see. Katara finally got her hair somewhat dry. Aang slid down the cave laughing happily with Momo. Down where the slide ended, 2 Fire Nation soldiers were just sitting around, bored out of their minds. This is probably the most boring job ever. One of them said while the bigger guard picked the middle of his toes with the hilt of his sword. A splash behind them caught both their attentions and they lay flat on their stomachs. They looked up from their cover and saw Aang emerge from the water, his arrow clearly visible. The Avatar is alive. We better tell the Fire Lord. As soon as Aang jumped back up into the crater, the guards got their messenger hawk and quickly wrote about what they saw. The bird flew away into the distance. Back, Azula and the gang were already at the beach in their beach clothes. They were currently looking for a spot to rest. Zuko was holding an umbrella above him and while Naruto did it to Azula, albeit not as close. A spot was soon open for them as soon as Azula scared off the children building sand castles there. A skinny boy approached Ty Lee offering to help unpack her beach bag, but as soon as she threw the bag at him he fell on the sand hard. He quickly unpacked everything and even laid out the blanket. Ty Lee sat down with a smile, but the sun was blinding her. She got the attention of the boy and said, "Could you move a little to the..." She wasn't able to finish her sentence when the boy moved automatically to the front of her, blocking out the sun. "Perfect. You want me to unpack your bag for you, Azula?" offered Naruto as he watched Zuko offer a shell to Mai before throwing it away. The shell landed near another boy and resulted in him looking at Ty Lee. Faster than the eye could see, boy number 2 was kneeling in front of Ty Lee offering her the same shell. "Wow, thanks, this is so pretty." "Not as pretty as you are. That shell is not so great." The boy moved and the sun hit Ty Lee. Shade. I have an idea, Azula," started Naruto as he plucked out her hairpin, making Azula's long hair go down. "Now wait and watch." Naruto sat behind their umbrella and soon enough a few boys approached her. All of them were complimenting and giving her things from seashells to watermelon juice. She ignored them and looked to the side, spotting a group of people playing kue ball. "Hey, beach bums, were playing. Ty Lee, get over here now." Zuko stood up from where he was seated and took of his robe in a flurry, making his hair blow in the wind and the nearby birds fly behind him. It made a really bad-ass image and a few girls giggled at it. "Show off," Naruto said as he went with Azula. Naruto stood to the side and watched as Azula, Mai, Ty Lee and Zuko were planning. It sounded like a battle plan with how Azula was saying it. It was funny and cute. The other team didn't even stand a chance and Azula's last move even created a miniature mushroom cloud. "Yes, we defeated you for all time. You will never rise from the ashes of your shame and humiliation," exclaimed Azula, a grin present on her face. Well, that was fun, and just like that it was back to normalcy. 2 boys approached the group. The boy with the top knot spoke first. "We're having a party at my house later, you should come by with your friend." "Oh, I love parties," Ty Lee said happily as Mai just gave the 2 a blank stare. "Aren't you going to invite us too?" Naruto said, going up to the face of the boy. His red eyes doing the rest of the job for him. Sure. Just try and act normal. Some of the most important teenagers are gonna be there, so be on your best behavior." The boys now know as Chan walked away with his friend, Ron Jien. "We'll try our best," Azula replied, her grin reappearing as Naruto smiled also. They returned to Lo and Lee's home for supper. The food was ready, so they immediately sat down. "Why didn't you tell those guys who we were?" asked Zuko, biting a piece of meat in half. "I guess I was intrigued," Azula started. "I'm so used to people worshipping us." "They should," proclaimed Ty Lee happily. "Yes, I know and I love it, but for once I wanted to see how people would treat us if they didn't know who we were." Like waves washing the footprints on the sand, Lo started but Lee continued, Ember Island gives you a clean slate. Ember Island reveals the true you. Strangely, Naruto was the one who continued before all three of them. Naruto, Lo and Lee stood up from the table and did a synchronized clapping, dancing thing before they raised their fists in the air. To the party. The three shouted happily. Everyone looked at Naruto strangely except for Lo and Lee. It's an age thing, Naruto said, scratching the back of his head sheepishly. Break. The messenger hawk continued to fly across the land when a raven eagle intercepted it and stole the message. It promptly landed on the metallic arm of the combustion man, Hitman for hire, and he burned the letter after reading it. Party. Azula knocked on the wooden door and was soon answered by Chan. He looked at the group before saying, you're a little early. No one is even here yet. You said we would be partying from dusk till dawn. Azula replied as she looked at the setting sun, it's already dusk. That was just a figure of speech. We are the perfect party guests, because we arrive right on time. Naruto said before whispering in Chan's ear, besides, what's the harm in having 3 gorgeous babes in your house? Chan thought about that before replying. I like the way you think. Come one in. Alright, here's the deal. My father's an admiral in the Fire Nation and he doesn't know anything about me having a party, so don't mess anything up. As he was about to walk away, Azula tried complimenting him on his outfit. Sharp outfit, Chan. Careful, you could puncture the hull of an Empire-class Fire Nation battleship, leaving thousands to drown at sea, because it's so sharp. Chan paused at that before saying, thanks. Azula pouted at the reaction before Naruto spoke up, you should have said, making the ship explode, killing everyone instantly, and leaving no survivors. Really? Azula asked, looking at Naruto. He was wearing the same thing Zuko wore except it was orange. The party soon picked up after that. People were talking and laughing. Some were flirting like what the boys were doing to Ty Lee, who was now cornered. So how do you know Ty Lee? I met her at the beach today. She was pretty impressed by the thing I made for her. Well, I met her first. A third boy said. They all looked at Ty Lee. Look, it doesn't matter who I met first. 'Cause I like you all. Yeah, but who do you like? Her reply was knocking all of them unconscious as she retreated back to Azula's side, who was alone. Naruto was currently mingling with a few people. He seemed pretty popular since everyone was laughing and listening to his jokes. Azula, I'm glad you're here. Those boys won't leave me alone. I guess they all like me too much. Come on, Ty Lee, you can't be this ignorant. What are you talking about? She said, giving Azula a pout. Those boys only like you because you make it easy for them. You're not a challenge, you're a tease. It's not like they actually care who you are. Azula crossed her arms and looked at where Naruto was. But she turned back around when Ty Lee started crying. Okay, calm down. I didn't mean what I said. Look, maybe I just said it because I was feeling. Azula looked around the room before saying, jealous. What? You're jealous of me? But you're the most beautiful, smartest and most perfect girl in the world. Well, you're right on all of those things, but for some reason when I meet boys it's like they act like I'm going to do something horrible to them. Ty Lee giggled at Azula's statement before she replied, but you probably would do something horrible to them. I'm sure they're just intimidated by you. Okay, look, if you want a boy to like you, just look at him and smile a lot and laugh at everything he says, even if it's not funny. She gave Azula a friendly smile. Well, that seems really shallow and stupid, let's try it. Replied a smiling Azula. Okay. Ty Lee cleared her throat. Hey there, sweet sugar cakes. How you liking this party? Azula's laugh caught everyone's attention. I'm bored, said Mai, who was leaning on Zuko in the couch they occupied. I know, replied Zuko, who was looking up at the roof. I'm hungry, she said, looking down on the floor. So what? So, find me some food. Zuko stood up and did find food for Mai. Sure. Azula, who wanted to test out what Ty Lee taught her, grabbed Naruto from the people who crowded him and pulled him out. Naruto, I'm ready for a tour of the house. But Azula, I don't live here. An angry scowl changed his answer instantly. Ah, I mean sure. I always liked going on adventures and stuff. He sighed and walked on with his head held low. They arrived at a balcony overlooking the sea. They both leaned on the railing and Naruto spoke, so Azula, come here often. My family and I used to come here every summer. We had this beach house not far from her, but that was a long time ago. Well, it is a great place. Too much sand for my taste though, Azula laughed at the comment. Naruto joined in her laughing before smiling at Azula. He placed a hand on her cheek, brushing off a stray hair. Unexpectedly, Azula leaned in for a kiss, capturing Naruto off guard. A few seconds later she pulled back and said, together, you and I will be the strongest couple in the entire world. She stood straight and raised both hands, creating blue flames in the process. We will dominate the earth. Naruto looked dumbfounded for a while before smiling at Azula, shrugging, and I'll be with you every step of the way, I guess. Naruto held both hands of Azula, extinguishing the flames, and pulled her closer, kissing her more passionately this time. The moment was ruined when they heard Chan yell, "Who broke my Nana's vase?" Ron Jien, who was pushed into the vase, pointed at Zuko. I think you should leave. Don't worry, I was just going to. He stormed off and slammed the door behind him. Naruto looked at the door before sighing, don't worry Azula, I'll follow him. Meanwhile, Toph woke up with a start and woke everyone up. Guys, I know this is gonna sound crazy, but I think a metal man is heading our way. What? Aang was interrupted when a light was blinding him. All of them looked up and saw a man looking down on them. His metallic arm and leg reflecting the moon's light. He breathed in deep and released his powers. Beach. Zuko kicked down the door of his family's abandoned summer home. Everything he looked at was giving him flashbacks when he and his family were still close and happy. As he walked up the stairs, he saw a family portrait. Beneath it was a set of handprints on cement. One was his and the other belonged to Azula. Nice place, Zuko. He turned around to see Naruto leaning on the stairs railing. He had an impassive look on his face, unreadable. Behind him was Azula, also looking impassive. Thought I'd find you here, she said, placing her hands on her hips. Zuko gave a sad smile before brushing his hair out of his face. Those summers we spent here seemed so long ago, so much has changed. Come down to the beach with us, come on, this place is depressing. Azula and the two boys followed Azula down to the beach where they met up with the others. As Zuko passed Mai, she greeted him with a, hey. Zuko was about to ask where her new boyfriend was when Naruto placed a hand on his shoulder. Zuko turned and looked at him as he just shook his head. Zuko sighed and sat beside Mai. Are you cold? He asked, wrapping a hand around her shoulder. Mai gave him a small smile and nodded. I'm freezing. Ty Lee said, embracing herself. I'll make a fire. There are a lot of things to burn in there. Zuko gestured to the abandoned house. He turned to Naruto and asked, can you help me out? Naruto only gave a small smile as he stood up from beside Azula. No one saw, but if they just paid attention, they would have seen both Azula and Naruto holding hands. Aang. The group was currently hiding behind a large boulder as the combustion man kept assaulting them with explosions. This is crazy, yelled Sokka as he covered his ears from another explosion. How can we beat a guy who blows things up with his mind? We can. Jump on Appa, I'll try and distract him. With that, Aang took off into the smoke. The combustion man ended up being led into an area full of rock columns. His hands and feet were clanking as he ran. Aang hid behind a column, breathing hard. He looked out of his cover just in time for the assassin to see him. He let loose a barrage of explosion, but Aang just kept dodging them by darting from pillar to pillar. He looked around in the smoke, not seeing Aang anywhere. He passed by a pillar and stopped. He looked back and a pair of eyes was looking at him from within the rocks. Aang shot out of the pillar, above the combustion man. He fired at him, but the rocks acted as Aang's armor as it served to launch him high into the air where Appa and the gang were waiting for him. That was random, replied Toph, staring at nothing. I don't think so. I have a feeling that guy knew who we were. Katara said as the group looked at her. Beach. A fire was already made as various pieces of furniture from the house was broken into pieces to make some kindling. Zuko threw in the painting of his family and Ty Lee saw this. What are you doing? What does it look like I'm doing? But that was a painting of your family. You think I care? Replied Zuko angrily, crossing his arms. I think you do, said Ty Lee in a soft voice. You don't know me, so mind your own business. He turned to walk away but heard Ty Lee whisper. I know you. He turned around and waved his hand in front of him saying, no you don't. You're stuck in your little, Ty Lee world where everything's great all the time. Zuko, leave her alone. Defended Mai. Zuko walked near the water and imitated Ty Lee saying, look, I'm so pretty. I can walk on my hands. He then stood on his hands and saw Ty Lee's angry face. He fell on his back and said, circus freak. Naruto held Azula closer to him, stopping her from laughing at the comment. Tears started to form at the edges of her eyes as she spoke. Yes, I'm a circus freak. Go ahead and laugh all you want. You wanna know why I joined the circus? Here we go. Azula whispered so that only Naruto could hear her. Do you have any idea what my whole life was like? Growing up with 6 sisters who looked exactly like me. Ty Lee stood up from her spot. It was like not even having my own name. She collapsed to her knees and started crying. I joined the circus because I was scared of spending the rest of my life as part of a match set. At least I'm different, no. Ty Lee didn't expect Naruto to suddenly give her a hug. It made her feel a bit better. It's alright, Ty Lee. We know who you are and we won't look at you as a part of a matched set. He smiled at her before helping her sit down. Besides, circus freak is a compliment. Naruto shouted at Zuko, who was still on the ground. I guess that's why you need 10 boyfriends too. Mai said aloud, making Ty Lee angry again. I'm sorry. What? Ty Lee said, sitting up on her knees, accidentally hitting Naruto square on the chin. He rolled back comically to Azula's side, who was laughing at his pain. Attention issues. You didn't have any attention as a kid, so you're trying to make up for it now. Hey Azula, you think this is getting out of hand? Naruto asked, but Azula was paying attention to the fight. Well, what's your excuse, Mai? You were an only child for 15 years. But even with all that attention, your aura is this stingy, pasty gray. I don't believe in auras, Mai interrupted as she looked at Zuko, who only now stood up from his spot. Yeah, you don't believe in anything. Zuko said. His hands were balled into fists on his side. As long as it doesn't involve us, Naruto, then no, it hasn't gone out of hand yet. Azula replied, listening to Mai's reply. Oh well, I'm sorry I can't be as high-strung and crazy as the rest of you. I'm sorry too. I wish you could be high-strung and crazy for once instead of keeping all of your feelings bottled up inside. Zuko looked at his hands as he spoke again. She just called your aura stingy. Are you gonna take that? Zuko said, pointing at Ty Lee this time. Mai just decided to lie down on the rock she was sitting on and said, what do you want from me? You want a teary confession about how hard my childhood was? Well, it wasn't. I was a rich only child who got everything I wanted. As long as I behaved, and sat still, and not speak unless spoken to. My mother said I had to keep out of trouble. We had my dad's political career to think about. Well, that's it then. You had a controlling mother who had certain expectations. Azula interjected into the conversation. She had her arms crossed in front of her, and if you strayed from them, you were shot down. That's why you're afraid to care about anything and why you can't express yourself. Mai suddenly sat up, her voice finally sounding angry. You want me to express myself? Leave me alone. Azula stared down Mai as she clenched her hands into fists. I like it when you express yourself, Zuko said, trying to hold Mai but was slapped away. Don't touch me. I'm still mad at you. Mai heard Naruto laughing and turned on him. And what about you, Naruto? What was your childhood like? Oh, so you wanna hear about my life? Naruto said as he stood up. He waved his hands over the fire, turning it black. They were all bathed in negative light and looked at Naruto as he cleared his throat. They didn't know why, but everyone felt a shiver run down their spine. I was an orphan actually. My parents were both killed by a demon. My early childhood was actually fun. Almost every day I had to look through the garbage of my village to find something decent to eat. The villagers always chased me and eventually beat me up. You see, I was born on the day my father killed the demon that also killed him and my mother. My father was the hero and leader of our village, so there were hard feelings when he died. They thought I was some sort of reincarnation of that damned monster and made my life hell. The fire suddenly turned back to its original color. I really enjoyed the day I told them I was the son of Minato Namikaze, the fourth leader and hero of my village. The expressions on their faces were priceless when I killed all of them. He looked at his hands, then up to his friends. You should always remember that someone probably has it out worse. Like my 9th birthday when the villagers dragged me out into the central plaza and beat me up with sticks and swords. Then they burned me alive and I can't really remember what happened next. You tend to forget things when your brain shrivels up. Everyone was silent after that. Each of them was reflecting on their own lives and compared it to Naruto's. Nothing was as bad as his life. I think everyone should calm down now, started Ty Lee, who looked sympathetically at Naruto, who seemed to be deep in thought. This much negative energy is bad for your skin. You'll totally break out. Bad skin. Normal teenagers worry about bad skin, snapped Zuko, looking pointedly at Ty Lee. I don't have that kind of luxury. My father decided to teach me a permanent lesson on my face. He pointed at his scar. Sorry, Zuko, for so long I thought that if my dad accepted me I'd be happy. I'm back home now and my dad talks to me. He barked out a laugh before continuing, he even thinks I'm a hero. Everything should be perfect, right? I should be happy now. But I'm not. I'm angrier than ever and I don't know why. It's a simple question that you should answer then. Who are you angry at? Asked Azula, placing a hand on Naruto's shoulders as he sat next to her. No one. I'm just angry. Yeah, who are you angry with, Zuko? Mai asked. Everyone. I don't know. Zuko clutched his head in mock pain. Is it Dad? Azula asked. Your uncle? Asked Ty Lee. Me? Asked Azula. No. Zuko answered. Then who are you angry at? Answer the question, Zuko. Talk to us. I'm angry at myself. Zuko slammed his fists down on the air, making the fireplace erupt into a column of flames. Because I don't know what's the difference from right and wrong anymore. You're pathetic, Azula said to Zuko, who was now facing the sea. I know one thing I care about. Mai said, going behind Zuko and hugging him. I care about you. She smiled and Zuko smiled with her. They both kissed soon after. Zuko stopped when he heard Azula clapping. That was a wonderful performance, everyone. I was almost about to cry because of Zuko's acting. Yeah, you wouldn't understand, would you, Azula, because you're so perfect. Zuko said as he placed an arm around Mai, who did the same. Well, yes, I guess you're right. I don't have sob stories like all of you. I wasn't going with sob story, I was actually going with horror. Naruto said, smiling like nothing happened. Azula smiled at his humor before continuing, I can sit here and explain about how our mom liked Zuko more than me, but I don't really care. My own mother thought I was a monster. Everyone looked at Azula, who was looking at the glowing embers of the dying fire. She was right, of course, but it still hurt. Naruto laughed at that and got closer to his new girlfriend, who did the same. What Lo and Lee said came true. The beach did help us learn about ourselves. I feel all smoothed, Ty Lee said as he picked up a rock and rubbed it with her fingers. I'll always remember this. All of them nodded to her statement except for Naruto, who was looking into the distant sea. Naruto. Zuko asked. Hey guys, is it just me or is that island moving? Naruto said out of the blue as he pointed out at a small island across them. Everyone looked and really saw the island moving. It was slow, but it was moving. That's weird, Ty Lee said. You know what will make this trip really memorable? Azula asked as he stood up with Naruto, who was still looking at the moving island. All of them went back to Chan's house and started ransacking the place. The last thing they saw was the crying form of Chan inside his ruined home. Azula looked at the gondola that housed her brother Zuko along with Sokka, Hakoda and 2 other prisoners she didn't know. They were too far away to jump across to, but that never stopped Azula. Naruto, she called out as Naruto quickly took out a familiar tri-kunai. I suggest all of you hold onto me. Both Azula and Ty Lee grabbed onto Naruto's armor. Hiraishin no Jutsu. Naruto threw the kunai hard, puncturing the roof of the gondola. In a streak of gold and black, they reappeared on top of it. How did they do that? Exclaimed Sokka as he climbed to the top with both Zuko and Suki. This is a rematch I've been waiting for. Suki exclaimed as she threw a punch at Ty Lee, who barely dodged it. Zuko was currently trading attacks with Azula while Naruto was having a staring contest with Sokka. Well, Sokka started saying while brandishing his weapon, aren't you going to attack? Well, see, that's the thing. If I attack, you might probably just die or something. I'm a bender and it's pretty obvious that you're not one. So I'm not gonna attack you. What are we gonna do then? Sokka lowered his sword, feeling that this guy was probably telling the truth. Well, first of all, the name's Naruto and I'm Azula's bodyguard boyfriend. I'm Sokka and that's my girlfriend Suki. He pointed to the girl who was duking it out with Ty Lee. Strange really, if both of them met on different circumstances they would probably be friends. After all, 2 idiots always get along with one another. Dude, you ever realize that we're attracted to strong women? Tell me about it. Naruto, we are here to capture these fools. Not make nice and exchange pleasantries. Azula jumped from Zuko's fireball and quickly threw a blue one at him. Right. Well, Sokka, if we weren't trying to kill each other we'd probably be good friends. Naruto said before going into a modified taijutsu stance. The only difference was that he had a straight posture instead and his hands were clenched into fists. I get that feeling too. Sokka said before lifting up his sword. They were about to fight when the gondola stopped suddenly. Apparently the warden was able to escape his bindings. Cut the lines. He screamed before Chitsang, a prisoner accompanying the group escape, pulled him back into the stationary gondola. If we cut the lines, the warden won't survive. He knows that. Another guard said as he hoisted the giant saw onto one of the metallic wires. They're cutting the wires. Azula, what are we going to do? Asked Ty Lee. The fighting instantly stopped as they felt the whole gondola shake. We're leaving. Goodbye, Zuzu. And with that, she propelled herself to the oncoming gondola along with Ty Lee. Naruto looked at Zuko for a while before saying, "So Zuko, you finally found your path, huh?" Naruto smiled before walking to the edge of the gondola. "Yeah, I did. What about you, Naruto? Don't you know that you're on the wrong path?" Naruto's reply was a chuckle, before jumping beside Azula. "Sorry, Zuko, but I make my own path." He waved at the group before turning to Azula, only now noticing her scowl. "What's wrong, Azula?" She looked at Naruto before pointing at the prison. Naruto followed her finger and saw Mai fighting off a group of guards as she successfully made the other gondola moving again. Ah crap. The other gondola started to move and soon enough was on the other side of the lake. What is that idiot thinking? Azula jumped off the gondola and faced Mai, who was being held in place by two guards. "Why?" Azula started, her face a mixture of anger and sadness. "You know the consequences of doing what you did, so why?" She grabbed the front of Mai's clothes and pulled her a good 2 feet up into the air. "I guess you don't know people as well as you think, Azula. You miscalculated. I love Zuko more than I love you." Azula threw her to the floor hard as she clenched her fist in anger. "No, Mai, you miscalculated. You should have feared me more." Azula started the right moves to create her lightning and Mai pulled out one of her knives. Before anyone could kill each other, Ty Lee moved fast enough to strike Azula, blocking her Kai and paralyzing her. Azula fell to the ground as Ty Lee moved to help Mai up from the ground. "Come on. We have to get out of here." Before they could run, a hand landed on both of their shoulder. They looked up to see Naruto, who looked very troubled and sad. "Forgive me for this." He channeled electricity through his body and into Mai and Ty Lee, knocking them both out instantly. The guards quickly carried the two unconscious ladies and started walking to the infirmary. "Put them somewhere where I don't have to see their faces for a long time. They can rot for all I care," Azula said as she was hoisted up by two guards. Naruto approached her and reactivated her powers and her mobility with just a few swift strikes to some of her pressure points. "And what about you, Naruto? Are you going to betray me too?" Naruto looked down on the ground, his heart heavy. "No, Azula, I love you too much to even think about it." He clenched his hands into fists. What should he do? Mai and Ty Lee were his friends, but so was Azula. Did he even have a choice? "Good, because if you were going to betray me," Azula lifted his head up with her fingers, making him look at her directly. "Then I would kill you myself." Azula may have looked serious on the outside, but she felt confused on the inside. Would she really be able to do that? Would she be able to really kill Naruto? Of all the people she knew, Naruto was the only one who showed her true love. And Azula loved him back equally. But what would happen if Naruto betrayed her? Would she handle it? Could she handle it? "You have nothing to fear, Princess. My loyalty is yours and yours alone. Come on, we have to go. If my brother isn't that much of an idiot, then he probably would have stolen my airship." Azula needed to think of something else. She needed to distract herself from the disturbing thoughts that kept appearing in her mind. Meanwhile, Sokka and Zuko arrived at the Western Air Temple with their friends in a new airship, courtesy of Princess Azula. They were greeted by Katara and Aang, who was smiling at them. "Wow, that must have been one good fishing trip. What happened to the ship?" asked Aang as he looked at the much larger and sturdier ship. "It kinda blew up," replied Sokka sheepishly, "but we got presents for you." "Is it meat?" asked Toph, who appeared behind Katara. "Yes, Toph, the best kind of meat made out of friendship and family." As if on cue, Suki and the rest of the group walked out of the ship. "Dad!" exclaimed Katara happily, hugging her father in the process. That night everyone was in a happier mood than usual. Finally, a family was reunited. But it wouldn't last. Azula looked out of her bedroom window. She could see the outlines of the temple. It wouldn't be too long now. By morning they would be at the Western Air Temple and they would corner the Avatar and his friends. She looked at the doorway where Naruto stood. His features, an unreadable mask. Both of them were shocked at Mai and Tai Li's betrayal, but Azula was the one who felt more pained. They were her first friends, probably her only friends, but still. Their actions made her start to doubt everything now. Azula thought that if she turned her back on anyone, they'd stab her. No, she shouldn't start thinking like that. She knew for a fact that Naruto would never betray her, right? Azula felt his arms wrap around her waist as Naruto placed a soft kiss on her left cheek. Azula turned and returned the embrace, also kissing him. "I love you," Naruto whispered into her ear as he kissed Azula again, more passionately this time. "Say that again," Azula replied as she pushed him to a nearby chair, sitting on his lap sideways. "I love you," Azula kissed him again, running her fingers through his blonde hair. "Again," she demanded, as if hearing those 3 words would destroy all the uncertainty that she held. "I love you, Azula, I'll always will." Azula smiled as she pulled him into a more passionate kiss. She forcefully opened his mouth so that she could slip in her tongue. It was funny, really. Seeing Naruto so submissive made Azula feel so powerful. She pulled his hair backwards painfully as she deepened the kiss further, her other hand now holding Naruto by the throat. "You're mine, Naruto. Nothing will take you away from me." And thinking it would go any farther, Azula stood up from a dazed Naruto. "Get some rest. We'll be at the temples in a few hours." Aang stretched out on Appa as he yawned, his air-bending arrows clearly visible in the morning sun. He stood up and scratched his head before his attention was caught by the chirping of birds at the fountain. He smiled at the scenery before a reflected light made him tilt his head to the left. The object bounced off harmlessly on Appa and noisily landed on the floor, resulting in everyone waking up. "What's this?" said Aang aloud as he brought it the group. Sokka looked at it for a while before passing it on to his father. Soon the object reached Zuko, who was still rubbing the sleep from his eyes. He looked down at the object and paled. Oh no! It was a tri-kunai. As if the spirits felt his fear, a shout echoed throughout the cliffs. Hiraishin no jutsu. A flash of yellow and red blinded the group momentarily, and before them stood Naruto, Azula smiling viciously at his side. "Good morning, everyone," Naruto exclaimed loudly as he gave a mock salute. "Have a good night rest." He looked at the group and spotted Aang. "Oh, so this is the Avatar. Azula, what are you doing here?" Zuko stood in front of the group and slowly got into a fighting stance. "Isn't it obvious? I'm going to celebrate being an only child." She charged at Zuko, shooting blue flames at him. "Zuko!" Aang shouted as he tried running towards him. But he was stopped when Naruto raised both hands in a way that said, "Stop." Naruto was staring down the group, especially Aang. "I actually thought that the Avatar would be older than this," he said casually before throwing something at them. Aang caught it in midair and saw that it was another tri-kunai. Wrong move, Avatar. At one moment he was 10 feet away, and in the blink of an eye, Naruto delivered a powerful right hook at Aang, sending him flying to the other side of the room. The others didn't fare any better with him as he unleashed a flurry of blows that left everyone on the ground. Toph was the first one to get up and created a rock pillar that sent Naruto flying. He quickly readjusted in midair and landed in a crouch. Earthbender. Naruto's anger resurfaced and his one-tailed state quickly surfaced. With inhuman speed he started sprinting towards Toph, who was raising blocks of earth to try and stop him. But Naruto just kept dodging or jumping over them as he went down on all fours. "Stop." Katara used the water from the fountain to create a wave and encase Naruto in ice. But his cloak just melted it almost instantly. Naruto didn't stop until he was right in front of Toph. He raised his claws and was about to strike down Toph when his body stopped moving. He looked over his shoulder and saw Katara. She was blood-bending. Leave her alone. Katara used blood-bending to force him to kneel down. You think you can control me? A claw made out of chakra shot out of his cloak quickly flew towards Katara. No. Toph quickly created a dome of earth that surrounded Naruto. This action quickly cancelled out the chakra arm. Who the hell is this guy? A low grumble was heard inside the dome before it shattered under the sonic boom that was Naruto's roar. Nothing will stop me. Never again. He slammed both hands on the ground and the whole temple shook. Meanwhile, Azula and Zuko's fight moved on top of the various airships that were pelting the temple with bombs. Zuko was dodging his sister's flames and shot another one at her. Both of their flames met in the center, causing them to both stumble and fall of the ship. They were in a free fall when Appa swooped down and caught Zuko harmlessly. He looked back at the still falling form of Azula and said, "She's not going to make it." Just then Naruto appeared behind her and disappeared in a flash of light. Of course she was. Zuko looked at his friends and saw that they weren't looking all too good. Aang had a black eye. The others sported a few bruises and cuts. He sighed before talking. Maybe I should explain who that guy was. If only the group saw the object that was tucked inside Sokka's belt. At Azula's flagship things were way different. Azula was again on top of Naruto, but both still wore their armor. Her fingers were tangled in Naruto's hair while her other hands were around his neck. Her fingernails cutting deep into his skin. Azula kept kissing him, as if her actions would cement him by her side forever. She didn't want to lose him. The actions of both her friends were still eating away at her from the back of her mind. She was starting to get paranoid. Naruto could clearly see the troubled look in his girlfriend's eyes. He promised that day that he will make sure nothing will ever harm Azula. Nothing will ever make her feel this way ever again. And Uzumaki Naruto never broke his promises. Naruto watched as Azula tossed and turned in her sleep. She was having a nightmare right now. He slowly caressed her cheek, making her calm down and smile. He smiled down at her and kissed her softly. She subconsciously grabbed his hand and hugged it. He had to do something to get her mind off of what was currently happening. He leaned on the window sill and thought for a while. And as if the spirits heard him, a piece of paper flew through the window and landed in front of him. He picked it up and read it. The Boy in the Iceberg. Next morning, back at Ember Island, we find Aang practicing fire bending with Zuko in the abandoned summer house. Both of them did synchronized fire bending before stopping and bowing to each other. Zuko sat down near the dried-up fountain that was located in the center of the backyard while Aang proceeded to stretch up. Doesn't it seem weird that we're hiding from the Fire Lord in his own house? Katara, who was sitting on the sidelines, faced Toph, who was beside her. She looked like she was sleeping. I told you, my father hasn't come here since our family was actually happy. Zuko said as he dried himself off with a towel. And that was a long time ago. It's the last place anyone would think to look for us. Hey, you guys are not gonna believe this. Sokka entered the backyard, holding a rolled up poster of sorts. There's a play about us. We were just in town when we found this poster. Suki continued as Sokka opened it up so that everyone could see. What? How is that possible? Katara asked as she stood up to get a closer look at the poster along with Aang. Listen to this, Sokka started as he cleared his throat. The Boy in the Iceberg is a new production from acclaimed playwright Pu Wan Tim, who traveled the globe gathering information on the Avatar from the icy South Pole to the heart of Ba Sing Se. He flipped the poster so that everyone could see it again. His sources include singing nomads, pirates, prisoners of war, and a surprisingly knowledgeable merchant of cabbage. Brought to you by the critically acclaimed Ember Island players, continued Suki as she read the last part. Zuko made a sound of disgust at the mention of them. My mother used to take us to see them. They butchered love amongst the dragons every year. They all looked at Zuko before Katara spoke. Sokka, do you really think it's a great idea to attend a play about ourselves? Come on a day at the theater. This is the kind of wacky time-wasting nonsense I've been missing. Sokka gave them a goofy wide grin. Meanwhile, Naruto and Azula arrived at the docks of Ember Island. This time no one greeted them because it was only the two of them. Naruto carried both of their luggages before proceeding to the hotel they were staying at. After much discussion, Azula agreed to some downtime in preparation for the day Sozin's comet would arrive. They were both in Fire Nation civilian clothing, but Naruto's clothes were customized to have long sleeves and pants. All of it was a dark shade of orange. Why are we here again? Azula tilted her shades downwards to better look at Naruto. He was currently looking at a map of the island. Last time they were here they only went to the beach in Chan's house. Not once did they go into town. We are here to relax and spend some time with each other, Azula. Naruto dug into his pockets and pulled out 2 tickets to the play, The Boy in the Iceberg, and we are going to watch the new play the Ember Island players are presenting. The Ember Island players, Naruto, you do know that they aren't that good at all. That's what's going to make it more fun. Look, the play is about the Avatar and his little group. Would it be funny to see them ridiculed and getting mocked? He said as he handed the tickets to Azula. I suppose you're right. But what are we going to do until then? Azula looked at the tickets over, reading the summary that was printed on it. Well, we're going to have lunch first, and then we're going to spend some time on the beach. After that we're going to have dinner before watching the show. Naruto smiled as he gave a thumbs up to Azula. Alright, let's go find our hotel. Theater. Up in the balconies, Aang and his friends were taking their seats as it was almost time for the show to start. Toph sat to the farthest left, Katara beside her. Aang was about to sit next to her when Zuko sat between them. Hey, I wanted to sit there. Aang said as he scratched the back of his head before holding them together. Zuko, who was wearing a hood, looked up at Aang and replied, just sit next to me, what's the big deal? I wanted to, okay. Aang just sat down beside him, deciding not to draw attention to them by arguing. Why are we sitting in the nosebleed section? Toph asked as she gestured to their location. My feet can't see a thing from up here. The theater lights dimmed as she said that. Don't worry, I'll tell your feet what's happening, Katara said sarcastically, placing both of her hands on her lap. The curtains opened and they were greeted by a scene of 2 actors that were dressed like Sokka and Katara. They were rowing a boat in the middle of the sea. Katara smiled as Sokka grabbed her shoulder, pointing to both of them while squealing. Actress Katara sighed as she raised her right arm into the air. The difference between the real one and the actress was that the actress was quite fat and unattractive. Sokka, my only brother, we constantly roam these icy South Pole seas and yet never do we find anything fulfilling. She looked down and clenched her fist, her eyes closed. Actor Sokka then spoke up, all I want is a full feeling in my stomach, I'm starving. Everyone seemed to laugh at his acting, including Azula and Naruto, who was occupying the seats reserved for the royal family. Sokka and Katara, however, deadpanned. She looked up to her brother as they shared the same expression. Is food the only thing on your mind? Actress Katara asked. Well, I'm trying to get it out of my mind and into my mouth, I'm starving. The audience burst into laughter again while Sokka whispered to Katara, who had her hands crossed over her chest. This is pathetic. My jokes are way funnier than this. Toph's response was to laugh and say, I think he's got you pegged. Actress Katara stood up from the boat and said, Every day the world awaits a beacon to guide us, yet none appears. Still, we cannot give up hope. For hope is all we have. She collapsed to the side of the boat while crying. And we must never relinquish it. Even to our dying breaths. She started to wail out loud, burying her face in her palms. Well, that's just silly. I don't sound like that, Katara said as Suki and Sokka tried to contain their laughter. Oh man, this writer's a genius, exclaimed Toph as she placed both hands behind her head. A light suddenly switched on, and there on the stage was the iceberg. It appears that someone's frozen in ice. Perhaps for 100 years. Actress Katara said. Am I laughing because I'm bored, or is it because this play is so stupid that it's starting to look funny? Naruto asked to Azula, who was still giggling. Who knows? But who? Asked actor Sokka. Inside the iceberg, the silhouette of Aang was clearly visible. Who is the boy in the iceberg? Aang was at the edge of his seat smiling while actress Katara shouted. Water bend, hiya. She did a chopping motion as the iceberg split in two. Fog started to spew out of the rock, and out jumped a female version of Aang, who gave the audience a wink. A few claps could be heard from the crowd as Aang joined Katara and Sokka as they shared a look of shock. Who are you, frozen boy? Actress Katara said. I'm the Avatar, silly. Here to spread joy and fun. The actress playing as Aang was twirling around as she said this. Wait, is that a woman playing me? Aang asked before a hilarious version of Appa flew out from behind the iceberg, making various sounds that a dog would do. An air bender. My heart is so full of hope that it's making me tear bend. Actress Katara then started to wail again while holding the leg of actress Aang. My stomach is so empty that it's making me tear bend. Actor Sokka also started wailing as he grabbed the other leg of actress Aang. I need meat. Actress Aang then gasped as she circled an arm around actor Sokka neck, pointing out into the distance. But wait, is that a platter of meaty dumplings? Ooh, where? Actress Aang started to laugh as she sat down on the edge of the iceberg. Did I mention that I'm an incurable prankster? The audience started to laugh as Aang seethed in anger. I don't do that. I'm not like that. And I'm not a woman. Toph was laughing as she said, oh, they nailed you, twinkle toes. A Fire Nation ship appeared on stage, and on it was a fat version of Iroh and actor Zuko, who had the scar on the wrong side. Prince Zuko, you must try this cake. I don't have time to stuff my face. I must capture the Avatar to regain my honor. Well, while you do that, maybe I'll capture another slice. Actor Iroh said as he started wolfing down the whole cake. You sicken me. They make me look totally stiff and humorless. The real Zuko said while Katara had a look of knowing on her face. Actually, I think the actor's pretty spot on. How could you say that? Let's forget about the Avatar and get massages. Actor Iroh said. How could you say that? Actor Zuko screamed. The scenery changed to the Avatar in one of the air temples. It depicted her finding Momo. Oh look, it's a flying rabbit monkey. I think I'll name it Momo. Hi everybody, I love you. Puppet Momo said as the crowd erupted in laughter. Aang just slouched down on his chair as he started to rub his temples. The scene changed again to show actress Sokka standing beside actress Suki. Both were dressed as Kyoshi warriors. Does this dress make my butt look fat? The crowd erupted in laughter while Suki tried to hide her giggling. An actor dressed up as King Bumi appeared atop a pillar of earth while he said, riddles and challenges you must face, if you are ever going to leave this place. Below him, the other actors were dodging various traps and such. Why did you have to steal that water-bending scroll? The scene changed to the time Aang was fighting the pirates. It just gave me so much hope, cried actress Katara again. The scene changed several times before they arrived at the scene where they were at the Northern Water Tribe. Don't go you're the only girl who's gotten my mind off of food. Actor Sokka said before kissing actress Yu. You never told me you made out with the moon spirit. Suki said before she was silenced by a teary-eyed Sokka. I'm trying to watch. The scene ended as actress Aang said, the Avatar is back to save the day. The crowd cheered and whistled as Aang and his friends deadpanned. It was the intermission and Naruto brought Azula out to get some food. We have to hurry, before we miss the next scene. Naruto said as he looked for a proper food stall. Don't tell me you're actually enjoying this. Azula asked laughing at Naruto. I'm not enjoying it, but it will be all a waste of time if we don't see it from beginning to end. Naruto made a turn on the corner before he stopped. Across from him were Zuko and the Avatar. He quickly turned before Azula could see what was behind the corner. On second thought, let's not risk it. What? At least get me some flaming fire flakes. Azula pouted before Naruto made a cage bunshin and made it look like another person. The clone quickly dashed to the food stalls. There. All taken care of. No way am I letting her see those guys. I brought her here to relax. Not fight. Meanwhile the rest of the group was sitting at the stairway that led to their seats. Sokka entered with a bag full of sizzle crisps. This intermission is probably the best part of the play. Zuko said heatedly. Apparently the playwright thinks I'm an idiot who tells bad jokes about meat all the time. Sokka said as he sat down beside Suki. Yeah, you tell bad jokes about plenty of other topics. Suki said, rolling her eyes. I know. Sokka replied chewing a piece of his snack. At least the Sokka actor looked like you. That woman playing the Avatar doesn't even resemble me at all. Aang said as he gripped both sides of his head. I don't know, you are more in touch with your feminine side than most guys. Toph said, making Aang growl in anger. Relax Aang, they're not accurate portrayals. It's not like I'm a preachy cry baby who can't resist giving over emotional speeches about hope all the time. Everyone didn't give a reply. What? Yeah, that's not you at all. Aang said, scratching the back of his neck. Listen, friends, it's obvious that the playwright did his research. I know it must hurt, but what you're seeing up there on that stage is the truth. Toph said. All of them soon took their seats as the next scene came into play. Well, here we are in the Earth Kingdom. Actress Katara said as Sokka and Aang stood beside her. I better look around to see if I can find an earth-bending teacher. Actress Aang said before pulling out a mini glider and flew off stage. This is it. This is where I come in. Toph said happily. The actress landed back on stage. I flew all over town but couldn't find a single earth-bending master. Here it comes. Toph leaned forward on her chair in anticipation. The rock prop that was in the middle of the stage suddenly went up as a buff man lifted it up from under the stage. You can't find an earth-bending master in the sky. You have to look underground. He threw the prop off stage. The group burst into laughter. Who are you? Actress Aang said. Actor Toph spat on the ground before saying, my name's Toph because it sounds like tough. The actor then flexed his muscles for the whole audience to see. And that's just what I am. Wait a minute. The real Toph started as she cleaned out her ears. I sound like a guy. A really buff guy. Well Toph, what you hear out there is the truth. It hurts, doesn't it? Katara said, not noticing the grin on Toph's face. Are you kidding me? I wouldn't have cast it any other way. She started to laugh. At least I'm not a flying bald lady. So you're blind, actress Aang said, waving her hands in front of the giant. He laughed before saying, I can see you doing that. I see everything that you see. Except I don't see like you do. I release a sonic wave from my mouth. He proceeded to scream at the other actors. There, I got a pretty good look at you. The audience clapped at his performance. The scene changed to Zuko and Iroh, arguing, about Zuko's hair. Zuko, it's time we had a talk, about your hair. It's gone too far. The actor playing Zuko waved his hair dramatically before saying, maybe it's best if we split up. Both actors exited on different sides of the stage. The scene changed again. Azula, my sister, what are you doing here? At the sound of her name, Azula perked up and sat at the edge of her seat. You caught me. Wait, what's that? I think it's your honor. The whole group turned to where Azula was pointing while she herself disappeared through a trap door. Where? Actor Zuko said. The group looked back while Katara said, she escaped, but how? Naruto looked at Azula, who had a blank expression on her face. Is she pissed? The scene changed to the time where Azula was drilling into the outer walls of Ba Sing Se. The whole audience was clearly starting to get bored. The next scene was a confusing one that made Zuko comment. Did Jet just die? You know, it was very unclear. Sokka replied. The next scene that showed Zuko and Katara flirting with each other made the real ones uncomfortable while Aang stood up and walked out. Can you get me some fire flakes? Sokka asked as Suki leaned on him. Oh, and fire gummies. Screw this. I'm going to get something to eat. What about you, Azula? Her response was shushing Naruto. Right. Naruto stood up and walked out. Out in the balcony, Aang was looking out into the sea when he heard someone approaching. He didn't bother looking though. Is this the snack bar? Nope, another dead end. Naruto saw a figure under the balcony's light and called his attention. Hey, do you know where the snack bar is? The figure sighed and turned. Yeah, it's over. As soon as Aang saw him, he immediately got into a fighting stance. I should have known the Fire Nation would send you to kill me and my friends. Whoa, hold on there, Avatar, let me clears things up, first. The Fire Nation does not train or hire assassins. None of the nations do anymore. Second, I'm on a day off with my girlfriend. So fighting is not on my agenda tonight. Third, I saw you and your friends during the first intermission, so if I was sent here to kill you, you'd already be dead. Lighten up. Naruto stepped up to Aang, who had lowered his guard. Besides, I'm not on the battlefield. I tend to not mix work and play. Oh, and fourth, Naruto moved so fast Aang didn't even notice until he felt the feeling of cold steel on his neck. Fighting me is useless. Naruto laughed at the expression that was on Aang's face. He lowered the dagger and slid it back into his sleeve. See, I could have killed you right now, but I didn't. Why? Because I'm not on orders. His manic grin turned into a kind one. Now why don't we chat a little? Both of us know that we aren't going back in there. He jerked a thumb in the direction of the main hall. Naruto laughed while Aang still looked serious. Why didn't you? Aang started. Why didn't you kill me just now? Or in the beginning, for that matter? Aren't you supposed to be a demon? Naruto flicked Aang on the forehead, his face showing playful annoyance. Use you inside voice, Aang, we aren't in a marketplace. And to answer your questions, I already told you I'm not under orders. Get that through your thick bald head. And yes, I am a demon, Aang. Probably the most powerful being on Earth right now, but that doesn't mean I should be killing all the time. He smiled before asking, who told you about me? Zuko. Aang shook his head and replied, Avatar Roku, the avatar before me, came to me in one of my dreams. He warned me about you. He said, watch out for the man with crimson eyes. Is that right? Naruto said as he walked back to the main hall. Well, it was nice meeting you, Avatar Aang. Hopefully we won't meet ever again. Oh, and fair warning, Ozai isn't someone you should hesitate in trying to take down. Nay. He walked out just as Katara entered the balcony area. Are you alright? Naruto walked back into the viewing box holding a bag full of fire flakes and ice cream. What did I miss? He asked as he handed Azula the ice cream. What did I? The Avatar got better. They invaded the Fire Nation. They were pushed back and now they're showing what would happen when Sozin's comet arrives. Miss, you're enjoying this, aren't you? SSHHH. It's already starting. On the other side of the theater, things weren't so different. Well, started Sokka as he got up and stretched. The play's over since is already caught up to the present. Suki pulled him back down again. The play's not over yet, look. But the play should be over, unless this is the future. For some reason an eerie light covered the bottom half of Sokka's face. Like what you do with a flashlight. Naruto really didn't watch what happened next. Both he and Aang were staring at each other from across the theater. Aang was seated next to Sokka and Suki. He smiled and waved at him, causing Aang to look away. Why is everyone so uptight these days? So what if there's a war? I mean, I was able to live a relatively normal life during the Fourth Great Shinobi War. I had time to relax. These people need to learn to loosen up. The play ended without Naruto knowing. Azula joined the crowd in cheering at the death of the Avatar and Zuko. Naruto looked up at Azula, who was clapping and cheering. He was about to say something when something hit him. I wasn't in the play, was I? Nope. Azula said, still clapping with the crowd. The curtains went up again to show that the actors were all lined up. They bowed together before the lead actress. Aang spoke. Thank you for being such a great audience. We would also like to thank Princess Azula for gracing us with her highness presence. A spotlight turned on to show where Azula was. The whole crowd clapped for her except for the Avatar and his friends, who were stunned to see Azula was there all along. Azula then pulled Naruto to the spotlight, who just scratched the back of his head sheepishly while smiling. This just shocked everyone more. Naruto's dating your sister? Katara asked, pointing at the couple. They knew who he was since Zuko had told them a lot about him. Even mentioning some of his powers. Dude, Sokka said, standing up and clapping for Naruto. Everyone looked at him before he explained, what? Naruto seems like a nice guy and I'm happy that he found someone, even if that someone is Azula. Should we leave? Asked Suki, watching the couple like a hawk. There's no need. Aang said, catching everyone's attention. When I met him during the intermission, he said he was here on a day off, so he's not here to attack us. How do you know it was all true? Asked Zuko, preparing for anything that might happen. Because he had every opportunity to kill me and he didn't. He had his blade on my neck and he intentionally let me go. Everyone was shocked at that statement. Aang was almost killed tonight. Why didn't he die? Do you ever get the feeling that if we weren't enemies with him, he could be a really good friend? Asked Sokka as Aang and Zuko nodded in agreement. By tomorrow morning, they would be heading back to the Fire Nation. Hopefully, Naruto's plan of relaxation helped Azula forget about most of her troubles, if not only a little. It looked like it was working though. She seems more relaxed than usual and she does not have her usual scowl. She looked, for once, peaceful. Naruto smiled before putting an arm around her neck. Azula, did I ever tell you I love you? Yes you have actually. But you could say it more.